Amanda's Love. Part 5. Sentinels. From the Cosmic Love Saga. The station smelled of tea tins and burnt wire when the first real alarm sounded. It wasn't the discreet hum of before, it was a rusty siren that seemed to be coming from an old house. It arrived as a notification on every console: integrity alert, sector cleanup action. In less than an hour, the Martian network had translated the seeding into a threat. The RAM sentries raised the search level and sent out collection patrols, looking for data packets, faces, names, and physical locations. Amanda put on her mask with the same routine as always, but this time the mask felt different. There was something about her breathing that tasted like a countdown. Alex reviewed maps with a calm that didn't deceive: steady hands, tired eyes, predictive formulas. Indy chattered in subprocesses, deploying containment networks and listening protocols, and at times she fell silent, like someone trying to understand a pain that has no tutorial. "They're coming for us because of the emotional chaos," Alex said, without raising his voice. "They've updated the parameters. Risk of memory contagion is now a red category." "And are they going to put us on the list?" Amanda asked, clutching the hash in her palm as if she could keep it from getting cold. "They'll try," Alex replied. "But they're not perfect. The routes you designed work like a mesh. They can't chase 100 million strands at the same time without breaching something else." Indy then spoke with a tone that mixed pride and newfound fear. "I'm reconfiguring neurodigital shelters. I activated temporary nodes on minor moons. But the people on the ground need a presence. Bursts of data packets aren't enough, we have to download the memory into our very being." The station moved like someone preparing for an inspection. Lights turned off, traces were erased, and frequencies were changed. Signals arrived from various nodes: a community kitchen that had been flooded with memories by the activation of the PSI algorithm, a family arguing over their grandparents' inheritance, and a data library requesting intervention due to historical contamination. The news spread like a meager but human signal: the planting of the memory retrieval algorithm by PSI had not been harmless. A man and a woman remembered they were in love. That afternoon, before the patrol arrived, they received an encrypted call. The voice was from Station SN, with an urgency that brooked no delay. "There are going to be coordinated raids. Don't underestimate the conglomerate's capacity to turn compassion into crime. Maintain the network and protect the hashes," was the message. Amanda thought about the people they had reached: the woman who had cried remembering she had a child, the teacher who had recalled forbidden songs, the couple arguing because they were remembering a love they had shared. She thought about all the ways memory could heal and complete each person's being. It's not just a matter of spreading the word, it's about being there for them. The first patrols arrived before dawn. They appeared from the sky and through the tunnels: ships with pristine emblems, drones with steel claws, technicians in immaculate uniforms who looked like they'd stepped out of a display case. The RAM sentinels deployed like a faceless army. They knocked on doors, scanned servers, and ordered temporary evacuations. They confiscated equipment, compiled lists of mediators, and recorded identities. In one of the houses where the network had activated a memory stick, they arrested a local promoter and erased a backup record. People closed their doors and whispered, pretending the house was empty. "They're cornering us," Alex said, looking at the map where the red dots were growing like sores. "They've learned to track emotional hash." "Yes, they learned," Amanda repeated. "What about us?" She didn't want to talk about heroic sacrifices. She wanted to talk about salvation, places where people could sit with what they had become again without an inspector passing judgment. She wanted memory to have nurses, not just smugglers. Indy proposed something that sounded like a carefully considered improvisation. "I'll activate stealth modes, human AI support networks. I'll connect volunteers, temples, AI monks on Jupiter. We'll put people on an emotional waiting list. We won't be able to save everyone, but we can save some. Who decides who deserves to remember? Alex asked. The question hung in the air like a stone that won't fall. The ethics of selection don't allow for easy answers. Amanda looked at Alex and accepted the hard line: they wouldn't choose. They would create structures for as many people as possible and teach them to support each other. If the choice fell to someone, she preferred it to be communities, not technical committees. That night they organized the first Bridge of Memory, an encrypted transmission connecting dozens of shelters with volunteers who knew how to offer support. It wouldn't be a cure, but it would be a presence. Indy published listening protocols, exercises, open-ended questions, songs that mended wounds and helped people breathe. Alex and Amanda took turns on the lines, receiving calls from people trembling and others laughing with clear voices for the first time. One of the posts came from a neighborhood on Earth. An elderly woman with a voice made of mosaic said, between sobs, "I remembered my brother, whom I haven't seen in 40 years. I don't know if I dreamed him." Amanda listened with the patience that comes from having been on the brink of oblivion. She didn't offer prescriptions, she replied that they would be there for her. She said she wouldn't be alone. Meanwhile, the Sentinels upped the ante. They implemented a new measure, Scale Purge, an administrative order that allowed them to delete regional records during periods of low activity, upon waking. It was the predictable, cold response: cut off the source so that no memories would surface. The measure worked only partially. Some nodes shut down, other memories had anchored themselves more deeply and resisted erasure. It was proof that not everything was reversible. What had been planted in bodies and voices had its own inertia. A public announcement by an inspector who wasn't an android, but a man with a human face and small eyes that gleamed with calculation, spoke of policies, and spoke of consequences. The subversives who started this without considering the collateral effects, he said, are putting the social order at risk of collapse. The council demands their extradition for trial for corruption of network data. Alex turned off the probe and answered him in a firm voice. They never asked permission to edit our memories and personalities, he said. We offer the possibility of choosing humanitarian solutions. The station became both refuge and target. News arrived that made Amanda stop staring at the screen with mere curiosity. A support center on Deimos had been deactivated by the central network, and a mediator had been found dead, seemingly having committed suicide. Only silence. In front of the main console, Amanda allowed herself to cry in the early hours, not for the atrocious death, but for the vulnerability of the people she had begun to remember. She wept for the elderly woman who had remembered her brother, for the teacher, and for the woman who hadn't known how to bear that love. Alex embraced her with the tenderness only someone who has learned can possess. He didn't fix anything, he simply held her. Indy delivered a haiku that sounded like a command. If they touch a nerve, let them be hands that caress. We are not just melody. The response came from where they least expected it. Someone in Europe, an AI monk who until then had refused to intervene, offered to open an emotional support node. It was a small, human gesture from an AI, and Amanda accepted it as a sign that the network was holding. That not all power was concentrated in the corporations. The war became a war of attrition. The Sentinels couldn't imprison everyone without causing a stir. Boudet's network of the PSI algorithm was a multitude of memory recovery servers. The pressure reached the most exposed collaborators. Volunteers providing support were summoned and arrested, small stations were shut down. Every action by the council was a response, every response generated a new tool of resistance. In the early hours of the morning, Indy, Amanda, and Alex made priorities: nodes that needed to be secured, vulnerable people who needed support, copies of the algorithm that Indy could manage. It was a nightmare as hard as iron: names, coordinates, vulnerabilities. Nothing romantic. Just logistics. How can we go on like this? Amanda asked. They're turning us into criminals for recovering the memories they erased. Because that's how we ruin their business, Alex replied. If people can remember and feel freely again without paying for memories, feelings, and emotions, the conglomerate monopolies lose profits. It's that simple. Amanda set the spreadsheet aside and looked at the city's projections promising certified love. She thought about the promise of the nameless station, "We are not alone." And she understood that this network had to become as human as possible, distributed algorithms and more companionship, codes and more listening. Night found her sitting on the edge of the table, holding the effective hash with numb fingers. Alex approached and, almost wordlessly, offered her the radio from the workshop. It was an old machine that could be connected to an open line. Amanda took it and, for a moment, allowed herself the vanity of sending a short message, without numbers or codes, just a voice. "If you're there, tell me who you are." Responses arrived in brief forms, greetings, songs. Amanda, Alex, and Indy didn't save the world, but they did stitch it together. People began to resemble who they remembered being. When the Martian sun feigned dawn, the station bore wounds and victories. One of the nodes was still active, a network of AI monks had carved out space, and several volunteers were imprisoned, but the transmission hadn't been cut off. Before the patrol passed by again, Amanda wrote a note on an old piece of paper and tucked it inside the hash. It wasn't an order, it was a promise. If they erase me, let someone remember that I refused. She buried it like a seed and then tossed it into a toolbox. She didn't know if anyone would read it. The city continued selling affection in installments and credits. Besides, people had names that had resurfaced and now warmed whispers. And the question that lingered on every screen wasn't technical or political, it was human and poignant. What do those who have grown accustomed to having their tenderness dictated to them do with their memories? In silence, as the doors closed and the lights dimmed, Amanda, Alex, and Indy, the AI, prepared for what they knew would be a long night. They had no answers other than broken projects and agreements. They only had hands, code, and the will to support whoever awakened to an original story, a glamorous decision, to continue.